Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For optimal viewing enjoyment, please mute yourself. We're going to start the program in a few minutes. And you can see right now this wonderful screen sharing and all of these absolutely adorable photos. And Jack Hagerman will tell you how all these photos came to be. But aren't they expressionless? And the expressions on them are absolutely wonderful. So today we're going to be recording the event to put it on YouTube Pasadena Library. And so you can review it, watch the program again, and share it with your friends. And we want to thank Jack very much and the Pasadena Humane for allowing us to do that. We also have live transcript, closed caption, and you need to enable that at your end if you would like to see it. So today's program is part of our Summer Reading Club program. It is presented in this brochure that we presented about Summer Reading Club. And of course, we're featuring the book, Leave Only Footprints, My Acadia to Zion Journey Through Every National Park by Connor Knighton. And today's program really ties in with that book. Connor Knighton visited all of the national parks in the United States and wrote about his journeys. And he was hiking and camping as well while he was doing that. And of course, you can take your pets along with you when you hike and camp. And so we're very pleased to have Jack Hagerman. He's the Vice President of Community Engagement at Pasadena Humane. And he's going to be telling us how Pasadena Humane was able during the pandemic to change their course of action and develop a new way to take care of pets and animals during the pandemic. And I want to tell you a little bit about Jack. He's had such a varied background, but as a child, he founded and operated his own makeshift animal rescue, taking in stray cats, injured birds, and the occasional bunny. Clearly not learning his lesson as an adult, he co-founded a critically endangered livestock conservancy on his farm in the Midwest, where he cared for and rehabilitated more than 400 animals and 17 different critically endangered livestock species. He told me that he did this for 4 years. So he's a native Angelino. He moved back to LA to pursue an animal welfare career at Pasadena Humane. But prior to his work at Pasadena Humane, he built a successful marketing communications relationship program at some of the largest healthcare delivery systems in the country, Scripps Health, Cedars-Sinai, and MedStart Health. So we're just delighted to have Jack today with us, and perhaps he'll tell us the names of all of these adorable pets that are featured. So welcome, Jack. Thank you so much for presenting today for us.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here today. I love any opportunity to get to brag about the amazing life-saving work that we're doing at Pasadena Humane. And I see a couple of familiar faces in the audience. Hi, Judy. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I will just start off by telling you a little bit about Pasadena Humane. I was mentioning earlier that all the photos that you see on the screen here, these are all, we had a photo shoot about a year ago. Just before, actually probably more than that now, because it was right before the pandemic hit, where we asked all of our employees who had adopted pets from Pasadena Humane to bring their pet in to be photographed for our new marketing campaign, because we were redesigning our website and redesigning all of our marketing materials and coming out with a brand new look and rebranding. And we wanted all of our pets to be a part of that evolution. So these pets are all pets that belong to Pasadena Humane employees, which is really cool. So let's see, why is it not advancing? Okay, so a little bit about Pasadena Humane. We were founded in 1903. We're one of the oldest humane societies in the country. We were originally founded as the prevention of cruelty to children and dumb animals. So back in 1903, we weren't just caring for homeless and abused animals, we were also caring for homeless and abused women and orphans. And we did that until the mid-1930s. The animal welfare movement and the child welfare movement sort of mirrored each other and were born of the same thing. And so many shelters across the country were shelters for both women and children and animals. So that was not uncommon in that time in our history. Somewhere around the 1930s, though, the animal welfare movement sort of split away from the child welfare movement. And as you know, the child welfare movement moved towards the foster care system. So we moved away from having children in orphanages because we realized from a development perspective that it was developmentally really bad for children to be warehoused in orphanages without a home. So the foster movement started for humans back then, but didn't really start for animals until very, very recently. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Who we are now, we are a completely donor-supported nonprofit organization, and we provide animal care and temporary shelter for companion animals and wildlife. We offer life-saving programs and services for animals in our community, and we provide animal control services to 11 cities throughout the San Gabriel Valley. And we provide resources for all animal-related needs in the community. Our mission is to lead the way towards a compassionate and caring community for all animals. We believe that companion animals should be residing in loving homes, and we want communities to respectfully coexist with wildlife. We are about 125 plus staff strong, and with over 1,500 dedicated volunteers. We have a really phenomenal volunteer corps who really kind of help keep the wheels on the bus. And we're kind of like a family here. Everybody who does this work, obviously you don't go into this line of work for the money. You go into this because you're passionate about the welfare of animals. So our team of employees and volunteers all share in the same core values of loving animals. So our core values as an organization are centered around the ideas of learning, integrity, kindness, and collaboration. Oops. So just to, animal welfare, sheltering specifically, went through a tremendous renaissance in the last year and a half as a result of the pandemic. And so the pandemic was not good for a lot of reasons, but for animal welfare agencies like ours, it was actually a pretty wonderful opportunity to reimagine how we provide sheltering services to the community. So one of the biggest shifts that we saw was a shift to a foster model of care. So remember earlier I was saying that, in the 1930s, we realized that it wasn't a good idea to warehouse children. So we put them in foster homes because being in a home is much, much better for growth and development. Well, as it turns out, the same is absolutely true for animals. And so the pandemic really forced us to push a new foster model of care into our community to get animals out of the shelter. And that was born out of necessity, because when the pandemic hit, we had to suddenly figure out how to provide care to the animals on a skeleton crew, because we couldn't have all of our employees on the property all at the same time because of physical distancing requirements. So, as soon as the quarantine occurred, we had to scramble to try and figure out how are we going to place all of these animals in foster homes. And what we did was we put out a notice into the community in the third week of March saying basically that, like, we need to get as many animals into foster homes as quickly as possible for their health and safety. And what was really amazing and inspiring was the community really stepped up. They really kind of, kind of came up and said, well, here, give me whatever, give me your, most anxious dogs, we'll take them, So we were able to clear our shelter within about 2 weeks of the pandemic quarantine going into effect, which was pretty amazing. And we were able to build this vast foster network to call on as more animals were coming in. So we actually got into a situation where we had more people wanting to foster than we had animals to be fostered, which was a really great problem to have. And then one of the other big pivots that we made that has been really amazing for the level of service we're able to provide is moving all of our services to appointment-based. Prior to the pandemic, coming to an animal shelter felt a lot like going to the DMV. There were long lines. You would get help when we had the time to help you. You wouldn't necessarily get very good service because we were trying to get through the line as fast as we could. So the customer service experience was constantly fraught with challenges because we couldn't appropriately staff for the number of people coming at us at any given time. So when we shifted to an appointment-based service model, we were able to actually appropriately staff for the number of people coming to us for help. And so what that means is when you have an appointment time, we're going to sit down with you and we're going to give you our focused attention for that period of time to make sure that the match that we're making, if you're coming in for adoption, that we're making the best possible match for you. And if you are coming to us for support services, we're really sitting down and having a conversation. So moving to an appointment-based model has really helped us to provide a much, much higher level of service to the community. And the other thing that happened as a result of the pandemic was that a lot of people were suddenly out of work, and a lot of people were suddenly really insecure about where their next paycheck was going to come from. And so it emphasized this much greater need to provide safety net resources for pet owners in crisis. So what does that mean? For us, it's a community food bank. Back in 2018, we started the Los Angeles community's first pet food bank in the region, and we were probably the largest pet food bank right up until the pandemic started. And we basically quadrupled the size of it during the pandemic. So we're providing pet food, pet supplies, veterinary vouchers, helping people manage landlord issues, et cetera. And the pandemic, because we all of a sudden had to close to the public, like we had to close to public walking through the kennels, that allowed us to expedite a shift to what is called capacity for care best practices. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So what is capacity for care? Capacity for care, considered holistically, basically means that we're an organization that is committed to meeting the needs of every animal admitted to the shelter, regardless of how they came in, when they came in, or their age, health status, or personality. So, every organization has to acknowledge their capacity for care and function within it to allow them to be the best resource for the animals and the people in their community. So basically what that means is, prior to the pandemic, we are known as an open door shelter, meaning we accept animals from our service area, regardless of age, breed, behavior, et cetera. And our practice previously was to admit animals, no questions asked. Like, If somebody came in and said, I can't care for my animal anymore, we'd be like, all right, sign this form, we take in the pet. And we didn't really figure out the reasons why. We didn't ask for any more information. And what that was doing was really increasing our population and making our population really inconsistent, which oftentimes would lead to not providing the highest standard of care because you're trying to help too many, right? So if you could manage the flow of animals coming in, then you can provide a much higher level of care to them. So the best analogy I can think of to describe that is kind of like coming, because I worked in healthcare for so many years before this, think about going to an emergency room, right? If something's going on, you go in, you're going to be seen whenever you're seen. You could be sitting there for hours and the quality of your care might not necessarily be that great. But if you make an appointment with your doctor, you're going to get seen. You might have to wait a little bit longer to get the appointment, but once you get in, you're going to be seen from a holistic perspective, and the quality of your care and the guidance of your care is going to be coordinated at a much higher level than is possible when you're in an emergency room situation. That's really what we're talking about with capacity for care. We want to make sure that the animals that are coming in to our care are the animals who absolutely need our help. And what we've realized is that a lot of animals that were coming in didn't need to be coming in. So we would start with a conversation. Well, actually, before I get to that, one of the other ways that we significantly changed our operations was engaging our volunteer base in a different way. Prior to the pandemic, most of our volunteer programs centered around animal care and husbandry in the shelter, because that's where we needed the help. We needed to be able to provide care for animals while they were sitting in kennels awaiting to go home, right? So with programs for enrichment, taking them out for walks, spending time in the kennel playing with them, and just giving them human interaction. A lot of our programs centered around that. But when we could no longer allow volunteers to come in to do that, and because most of our animals were in foster homes, we had to reallocate our volunteer resources in different ways. So what does that mean? In 2020, we had a 35% increase in foster care volunteers who accrued service hours, and a 43% increase in the total amount of hours earned in that program, which basically means the volunteers who were coming on site were now just actually volunteering at home and keeping pets in their home for us, which was a much better way of providing care to animals at the end of the day. Going back to the appointment-based service, these are just some talking points about why doing the appointment-based service is better. We were finding that we were providing better service. So we saw a 42% decrease in negative Yelp reviews, which was always the bane of my existence when I first started working here, was bad Yelp reviews, because we were always coming from behind. So it was understandable that we weren't providing really great service because we could never manage the influx of people. We saw a 33% increase in 5-star reviews, which was huge. People really, really started to enjoy the quality of service they were getting from us. And we saw a 37% increase in the excellent rating on our overall adoption service, because now that we had adoption appointments, we could actually sit down with you and really take the time to match you with the pet that's going to be best for your lifestyle. The other thing that we created at the start of the Animal Resource Center, or at the beginning of the pandemic, is our Animal Resource Center, and we also created a call center. So remember, before we were just this, we were a place that you came to when you needed any kind of help with your pet. And since we couldn't allow the public to come through our doors anymore, we had to sort of reimagine what that would look like. So we created our first call center so that you could get most services that you would need, or most help that you would need, you could get over the phone or through our Animal Resource Center. So rather than doing the reactive dumpster fire over-the-counter service, we were able to provide a much higher level of service through our call center and Animal Resource Center. And basically it starts with a conversation. The reality is there are a number of reasons why animals end up in shelters, but there are a lot of ways that we can help people not have to use that as a last resort, right? So now that we have an animal resource center, we actually have a team of people whose job it is to, they're basically social workers. They're case managing every call that comes through. So if someone is having trouble paying for food, we can help them with food. If they're having trouble paying for an unexpected vet bill, we can help them with a veterinary voucher. So all of these things, support services as alternatives to intake, were a new thing for us. One area of alternative intake for us is what we call TNRM. That's called, it's trap, neuter, release, and monitor. And this is the most proven approach to addressing issues with community cats or feral cats. The idea being, if we can trap as many feral cats as possible, bring them in, get them vaccinated, get them spayed and neutered, and then put them back out, over the course of time, they will produce fewer kittens every kitten season, because kitten season is a big issue in Southern California. So if we can cut down on the number of cats reproducing, that over the course of time, we'll start to see fewer and fewer feral cats living on the streets. So the TNR program that we started at the beginning of the pandemic has really helped to provide better resources for feral cats rather than intake to the shelter and unnecessary euthanasia. And then other supports that we provide is finding lost pets, low cost vaccinations and spay neuter, home-to-home placement, meaning if you know that you can't keep your pet, you're moving to a place that doesn't accept them, but you've got some time, we can help you with resources on our website to introduce you to other people who might be willing to take your pet from you. And we have other Helping Paws resources for people who are experiencing housing insecurity or financial insecurity. And the other sort of shift is, because we were now having conversations with people, we were no longer taking animals in, no questions asked. We're now sitting down with you and talking to you about the circumstances, and we're talking to you about your pet. We're getting a lot more information at the time of intake. And what that does for us is it helps us plan the stay for that animal and figure out the most appropriate pathway. So, for example, if someone is relinquishing their pet because it's got some really severe behavior issues that they can't handle, then upon intake, if we know that, then we can immediately prescribe a behavior consultation, a behavior assessment, and figure out what behavior modification is going to be required to get that animal suitable for placement and to address those behavior issues, right? So we're doing that much faster, so animals aren't just sitting in a kennel waiting for long periods of time to get to a home. We expanded our Helping Paws resources tremendously. So remember, I was saying that we have a pet food bank, and in 2020, we served 95,000 meals through our pet food bank, which is huge. It's the most resource than any other organization in the Los Angeles area. We provided 232 fee-waived vaccines, 69 fee-waived microchips, 150 subsidized or fee-waived spay-neuter surgeries. And in 2020, we introduced our veterinary voucher program, and we've served 11 pets in 2020 through that program. And we've featured, this number is out of date now, but at the time that I created this presentation a couple months ago, we had helped 154 pets to be featured through our home-to-home adoption program, which is yet again another alternative to intake. So remember, we were talking about before, we just no questions asked, bring in all the animals, regardless of whether or not they need to be here. And what that led to was a lot of staff fatigue and high turnover, because when you're overextending your employee on a daily basis and they're constantly feeling like they can never get ahead, it's difficult to maintain a positive work environment. And so people don't tend to stay long. We would see overcrowding in the shelter, particularly in the summer months when it would start raining down kittens. We would have kittens in cages in hallways in people's offices. It was a crazy mess. And because everybody was always coming from behind, we had an inability to really train staff to be better at their jobs because they were just trying to stay on top of things. We also saw a tremendous amount of disease, because when you house animals, a lot of animals in a small area, the disease spreading is going to happen a lot more. And we struggle to provide community services to get to the root of animal welfare issues like the TNR program. Because we were so busy trying to care for all of the animals in our shelter, we couldn't dedicate resources to actually solving the root of the problem. And we had an inability to provide adequate care to the animals who had no other option than intake. So the ones who really needed to be here weren't getting that really high level of care that they needed because we were trying to care for so many, right? Now with our alternative resources model, because we're giving people resources in the front end as alternatives to intake, we're able to provide TNRM, we're able to provide support for lost pets, low cost, no cost vaccinations, home-to-home placement, all those things that we talked about. What we're seeing is fewer intakes to the shelter. And what does that mean for the animals? When you have fewer animals in the shelter, it means that the staff is able to provide a much higher level of care to those animals and get them moved through to adoption that much faster. So that means that our length of stay starts to come down steadily. When you're moving animals through the system much more efficiently, they don't have to sit in the kennel that long, which is really great. And because we moved to appointment-based for everything, our adoption experience was really created much more as a concierge experience. Because the kennels are not open to the public now, you know, you're able to get that matchmaker escort to sort of walk you through the kennels and focus completely on you. And without all of the chaos of people running around, it's just a much, much nicer experience. And then this, I just wanted to tell you a quick story about Eileen. This is Eileen, the chicken. When she was found as a stray, her right foot was turned completely backwards from an incorrectly healed fracture. And so she couldn't walk or put weight on her right leg. And so she couldn't even really stand. But we knew that Eileen had chances at a happy life depending on restoring the use of her injured limb. So this was a first for us. Our veterinarians were actually able to surgically refracture Eileen's leg so that it could be rotated into the correct position and then attached an external skeletal fixation device to stabilize it. And so when it healed after about 4 weeks, she was able to walk around and we were able to place her up for adoption and she could have a really great life. This is an example of what I was talking about, helping animals who actually really need to be here. Because we were managing the intake into the shelter, we actually had the bandwidth and resources to be able to help this animal in a way that we probably wouldn't have been able to before. And so some other additions that happened as a result of having that better capacity for care, we're now providing a really high level care in terms of food and shelter for everybody that comes in. So now we actually have an ICU to care for the really, really sick patients that come in. And we are able to actually provide specialty care for animals who are in need of it. And we're one of the only shelters in the region who has a ringworm and parvo treatment program. These are all things that would previously be reasons for euthanasia. And now we don't have to euthanize for a lot of medical reasons. We're able to get animals to a healthy place to be placed for adoption. And we're also providing telemedicine now. So for all of the animals that are in foster care, we're able to provide our fosters, in the moment help with any issues that they're having with animals that are in their care. And our behavior and training program has become really robust as a result of all of this. The team is able to really put their resources into working with some of the most difficult behavioral cases that we see, and we're able to get them to a place where they're actually safe to be adopted. Where previously, if the behavior felt like it was insurmountable, that might be a candidate for euthanasia. So it just means all of these expanded, enhanced services is leading to more life-saving, less euthanasia, more placement. It's all really, really good news. Here's another example. So this happened probably about this happened in January this year. We took in 12 cats from, we were contacted by uh, a landlord who had discovered that one of their tenants had just passed away from COVID-19 and left behind 12 cats in the unit who were all suffering from a number of pretty severe infections. So a number of them had eye and ear infections. And so a number of them had congenital eye issues, which is usually a product of being inbred. So this was probably a person who just sort of got in over their head and didn't know how to ask for help or didn't have the wherewithal, and things just got out of hand. We were able to take in those 12 cats and we were able to fundraise enough money to be able to provide the very expensive medical care to repair the congenital eye issues that they had. So we were able to do surgery on all of them to get their eyelids in good working order, and we were able to place all of them up for adoption. Again, this is another example of being able to provide that really high level of specialty care for animals who really, really need the help. And this is Mary. Mary is one of my favorite girls. If you look at her before picture, this is heartbreaking. I mean, we found Mary shivering and hiding in the back of a dumpster not far from our property. And when she was found, you couldn't even really get near her. You had to wear a mask to be around her because the odor emanating from her was so severe. You could smell her from 4 rooms away. And so we had our groomer come in and do a massive extreme makeover on Mary. And as we were going in deeper to sort of find all of the problems, we discovered that she had really, really bad dental health. And so a lot of her fur was matted in between her teeth. And so as we were cleaning out the matted fur, all of her teeth just sort of came out. And so we had to do pretty extensive dental work on her. And so we finally got her to a place where she was comfortable. If you look at the bottom picture, she was a totally different dog once she was groomed. And once she was groomed, we actually got to see her personality. Before that, she was always scared. She was shivering and didn't really know what was going on. But once she was groomed, she was all of a sudden had a great personality and just wanted to be with you. And we were able to place her in a home with a retired woman who had just lost her dog, who looked very similar to Mary, and Mary was able to come in and they have lived happily ever after. Pasadena Humane also is one of only 2 shelters in Southern California that possesses state and federal wildlife permits, which means that we are able to rehabilitate wildlife here at Pasadena Humane. So we do wildlife rehabilitation and release. So it's not uncommon for us to have, little baby squirrels who had been orphaned, in our care in the backyard, in what we call the nut house, which is sort of this transitional space where wildlife is able to slowly transition back into the wild. And we facilitate wildlife transfers. So when we have really tough cases of wildlife coming in who need a more extensive rehabilitation that we can't provide, we have a vast network of folks that we can send them out to get them healthy and back out into the wild. We also have a wildlife hotline because, as you know, living in up against the foothills, we have a lot of wildlife in our area. So we have a wildlife helpline to assist people if they have issues with wildlife in their neighborhood. And we provide a lot of extensive training and education for peaceful coexistence with wildlife. So we do a lot of community presentations on how to manage coyote behavior, for example. how to safely haze coyotes so that they don't cause problems in your yard, et cetera, et cetera. Here's another example of a happy ending with Soldier. Soldier was a 2-year-old who went missing in October of 2020. He slipped his leash while he was on a walk and just vanished. Soon after, some concerned residents called South Pasadena PD about an abandoned dog at the park, which was actually quite a distance away from where he disappeared. So our ACO picked him up, and all he had on him was a backpack style harness that said Soldier's bag on it. So we at least knew that his name was Soldier, but he didn't have any other identification or a microchip. So he was in our shelter for a little while and was adopted in November, but was returned shortly after that because he didn't get along with the other dog in the household. So all of a sudden he was back in the shelter and was adopted again, but was returned again simply because the person who had just adopted had just found out they were being transferred out of state and couldn't keep him. So now he was back in our shelter for another visit. And then we were able to, because of a lot of social media advertising, his original owner who lost him back at the very beginning saw him on our social media and was able to be reunited with him and his family. So he finally, after 2 adoptions, got to go to his original home where he belonged. So that was a really great story. We also provide field services, or what most people know as animal control. And within that, we do animal cruelty and investigations. We provide resources for barking dog complaints. We also do RTO in the field. What that means is return to owner in the field. So when animals go stray, we can actually, if they're microchipped or have identification, we can actually reunite them out in the field without ever having to bring them into the shelter. And we also do emergency and disaster response. This is the service area for Pasadena Humane. We provide animal control services for all of these localities in our area. And we do have a low cost, no cost spay-neuter clinic. We provide vaccines, microchips, and we also have a very robust community cat and TNRM program. So if you have feral cats in your neighborhood that you need to try and get a hold on, we're here to assist you. We can rent out traps for you. We can even train you on how to do it. And when you bring them in, we'll spay neuter them, put them right back out. And then over the course of time, their numbers will dwindle, which is what we want. We also provide training classes for the public, training classes and workshops for dogs and cats. We have a free behavior hotline to be able to provide quick tips on things like potty training or issues that you might be having. We also do virtual one-on-one training sessions if that's something that you're interested in. And all of those things are at a really reasonable cost based on what you would get out in the retail land. We talked a little bit about helping Paws. It's just assistance for pet owners in need through our food bank, emergency boarding, veterinary vouchers, and fee-waived services. We do a lot out in the community in addition to all of this. we go out in events, we do mobile adoption events, we provide educational webinars, animal themed events, virtual kids programs. We're in the middle of our annual summer camp right now. So we've got kids on site Monday through Thursday every week doing a variety of really fun activities. And our program just keeps getting more and more popular every year. This year we sold out in about 40 minutes. So the community really, really loves our camp for kids. We also have a giant mobile unit that goes all over the region to do adoption events, mobile wellness clinics, and it also serves as a a mobile command center in crisis times. We do have volunteer opportunities. If you're interested, you can go on our website to learn more about how you can volunteer here. I won't go too much into that because we've got so many great resources on our website that it's easier to just go on there and read about it. And I want to make sure that we've got enough time for questions. So I'm going to actually go through the rest of these and get to the end so that I can answer any questions that you might have. That is the end of my presentation. So I will take whatever questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jack. What a fabulous presentation. And our hearts just went out when we heard the story of Mary. Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mary and the chicken, that you could take care of the chicken's leg. I mean, things that you just don't really truthfully think about. So if anybody has any questions, put them in chat and I'll be happy to ask you. One right now is saying, are you taking donations of food blankets?
Yes, we are taking donations. We do take donations of food as long as it's unopened. We can't take any opened bags of food, but we do accept food and we accept blankets and towels as long as they're laundered. But we do accept those every day.
Oh, that's nice to know. So,
and we definitely need them, especially now because of because we're in a really busy time. Donations are always appreciated. We also have, if you want to check out our wish list on Amazon, that's also a really, really great way to help us out because it actually gives us the products we actually need the most. So definitely check out our wish list on Amazon because there's a number of things on there that we always need. Caranda beds, you know, all different types of things.
So that you can just go to Amazon and order them, pay for them, and then they'll be delivered right to Pasadena Humane.
Yep.
That's fabulous. That's wonderful. So how many animals do you actually have right now that you're taking care of?
So we're really busy right now. We have about 200 animals in the house currently, and about 120 animals out in foster homes. So we're really full right now. We've reached sort of the beginning of kitten season. And if you don't know what kitten season is, let me tell you, it sounds really cute and adorable. And I guess it is in a technical sense, but it's actually a really big problem for shelters, particularly in California, where we have such great weather. Because when the warmer months come, cats, you know, love is in the air, so they procreate, and cats can actually reproduce up to 4 times a year. And if an average litter has, you know, 4 to 6 kittens, a single cat can yield a lot of babies in a single year, which is why TNRM programs are so important in our community, because it's not uncommon for us to have 40 kittens come in a single day. That we then have to, if they're underage, if they're not able to feed themselves yet, then all of a sudden we have to find foster homes for people who can bottle feed them until they're old enough to come in for their vaccinations and be placed up for adoption. So kitten season is a real big issue for shelters, and it is always the thing that taxes our resources the most during the summer months when it's warmest. So from the time of about the middle of May until the end of September, we are just inundated with kittens on an ongoing basis. And it's also, there's something about the warmer months that makes more dogs go stray. So we also start to see a big uptick in the number of dogs coming in. So we just, you know, the day before yesterday, we had 10 guinea pigs show up. So it's a super busy time. So we're actually having a free adoption event this Saturday, no appointment necessary. You can just come anytime between 10 and 4 p.m. And all of our adoptions are going to be waived this Saturday. So if you're looking for a pet, now is the time.
Sounds like a great thing to do. I've seen the display that you've had and all your volunteers at the PCC swap meet. So
Mhm.
that's a great way, and you can see all the dogs and visit with them too at that
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to become a foster parent, how would you actually do that?
It's super, we've made it really, really easy. So all you have to do is go onto our website and there's an email address. It's a quick form that you fill out and then you send it back to us. And you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're able to manage. And then we get back in touch with you. And if we have something that's available to foster in this moment, we'll go ahead and set you up with whatever training and resources that you need. The other thing that's important to know about foster is that it's a really great, if you are not used to having pets, or it's been a really long time since you've had a pet, this is a really great way to kind of take them for a test drive and see how having a pet in your home is in reality versus theory. So, and because we're in Los Angeles, a lot of people work in the entertainment industry and travel a lot. So fostering is really great if you know you're going to be grounded for a while. Why not foster a pet for a few weeks while you're sitting in LA, hanging out, waiting for your next job to happen? We provide all of the resources for you. So all of their food, veterinary care, any supplies that they need, we're going to provide that for you. So the only thing that you have to do is give of your time and give them a safe, warm home to be in.
Well, that's a little enough to do to have a pet that you can have just for 2 or 3 weeks. That's quite an amazing thing that you can do every time you
Yeah,
have
and
to.
it really does make a huge difference for us because you know, as I'm really proud of the level of care that we provide in the shelter, but there is no substitute for a home. You know, like we
Yeah.
just know scientifically that animals do better when they have humans with them all the time. And to be stuck in a kennel for days or weeks on end is not good. So we want to have as many of our animals in loving foster homes while we await permanent placement for them as possible because it just makes it a better experience.
So I've also seen a lot of peacocks around. Do you ever have people come in and bring a peacock, or they just have so many, or it's probably hard to catch them?
Well, peacocks are wild, so we don't have people bringing them to us. That would be kind of strange if they did. But they do reproduce easily, so they do tend to provide cause a lot of problems for residents. They can be pretty destructive and obnoxious at times. So we do provide educational resources for how to safely, peacefully coexist with them. We can also provide, information materials on how to deter them from your yard in a number of ways. So we don't ever intake wildlife unless they're sick or injured. Otherwise, we just provide education and resources for how to peacefully coexist.
Okay, so do you do the same thing about how for us to coexist with all these coyotes? Because you can just
Yes.
see coyotes everywhere walking down the middle
That's
of the.
probably the thing that we do the most. We probably do the most community presentations on peaceful coexistence with coyotes because it is the biggest issue in our area. And the reason it's the biggest issue in our area is that we live in a really beautiful, temperate environment that has good weather all year round. And what that means for wildlife is that they have plentiful food resources. And wildlife reproduce based on the amount of food resources available. So if they have a lot of food available to them, they're going to procreate a lot more. If food resources are scarce, they don't reproduce as much. And where we live, there's food everywhere. There's, from fruit trees to garbage bins, there's no shortage of food, which means that they tend to have pups a lot more often, which then exacerbates the problem. So we want to haze them And we want to make our home environments as inhospitable as possible. So we provide a lot of different tips on how to make your home an inhospitable environment for coyotes. Simple things like not leaving your pet's food outside, making sure that you've got latches on your garbage bin so that they can't be gotten into, making sure that your grills are properly cleaned so that the odor doesn't attract them to your yard. Simple stuff. Making sure that your shrubs are trimmed so that they don't have opportunities to den or hide. Making sure that the fruit on your trees that falls down from the trees is picked up on a regular basis so that you're eliminating the food resources for them. If they don't have a reason to come to your yard, they're not going to come to your yard. So we give people a lot of advice on how to make their home environment not fun for them.
So are all of those tips on how to deal with coyotes and peacocks and anything that's really wild, are they on your webpage?
Yes, they are. If you go to pasadenahumane.org/wildlife, we have lots and lots of educational materials available for how to manage wildlife and peacefully coexist with wildlife.
So what is the most unusual animal that has ever come into the Pasadena Humane?
Well, for 20 years, we had an alligator named Tina, who now lives at the LA Zoo with her boyfriend. That's probably the most exotic resident that we had. She lived here for about 20 years until we were able to find placement for her at the zoo. So now she's in a really beautiful enclosure at the zoo. We have a goat right now. It's the second goat that we've had in 2 weeks. So that's not uncommon. We see stray pigs pretty occasionally. We see chickens. We've had some ducks. Pretty much any kind of domestic or livestock animal we've seen come through here at some point or another.
Whoa, so you're never ever unsurprised about what's going to come or walk in the next day through your door?
No, we see some pretty interesting things. We had one situation, we had I can't call it a hoarding situation, it was more of a neglect situation about 2 years ago. An elderly gentleman he was unable to really care for his pigs for a really long time. And so the pigs were sort of living unmanicured on his property for a very long time. So their hooves had gotten so overgrown that they couldn't really walk on them. And so they were really overweight because they were eating, but they weren't getting any exercise because they couldn't walk because their hooves were so overgrown. So we had to go in and do some serious hoof trimming so that we could try and get them back into good shape again. So things like that happen occasionally. It's never dull around here for sure.
Well, you've given us a good program all about things that we wouldn't have thought of or we didn't realize that was involved with Pasadena Humane. Animals that we didn't know about that you have arrived, how you've actually taken care of them, what you've done during the pandemic. It's absolutely amazing. It was a fabulous program. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. It's really makes all of us want to participate more with the Pasadena Humane and see what we can do to help you. So,
and we invite it.
Yes. So
there's
everyone,
lots of ways to help.
Yes, please go to the website. It is a wonderful website, Pasadena Humane, and contact Jack if you have any other questions. Is there any other questions before we thank Jack very much for his wonderful presentation today? I don't think so. So thank you. What are the names on your web page of those 4 darling animals that pop up first of all? You've got the cat and the dog and the squirrels, and I forget what the 4th one was. Do you know the names?
I know Wilbur is one of them. I don't think I know the names of most of the other ones because there's so many. We have so many that rotate through.
Oh, you rotate the
It's,
pictures.
yeah, we rotate the pictures quite often. We've got a lot of them.
So in addition, we'll end with a question. In addition to the unusual animals that have come in, what's the most unusual name that you've ever? Do you have an unusual name? You don't hear Wilbur too often.
There have been so many. We had, I don't remember the exact name, but I remember that at one point we had a dog who had several names. Like he had like he had like a first name, 3 middle names, and a last name. Esquire. It was like, you know,
kind of like
Charles Hendrick the Third. Like it was, you know, like people get really creative with their names. I'm trying to think of one that's really, there have been so many.
Well, people's pets become their children or the part of their family. It's definitely another family member.
We had one recently that was named Fat Boy, and it was a little Chihuahua who was definitely not fat, so it was sort of an ironic name. But yeah, we see a lot of interesting things come through.
Yeah, kind of like the child that names their dog Spot because it has a spot on its head, you know.
Yeah,
sticks with the dog. So thank you so much, Jack, for a fabulous presentation. Very, very informative, and we've all learned a lot. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, good night, everyone. And remember, you can watch the wonderful program on YouTube, Pasadena Library. Good night.
Night.